Welcome to Cooking with Gerry. Today we're making omelets. A great choice for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It can also be a snack, and it can also be a dessert option. If you want something sweet, you can add dried fruit, and then at the end you can sprinkle on some icing sugar. Lots of variations on how to make the omelet by way of what you put into it. You can put vegetables, you can put meat, you can put cheese, and if you're making for a lot of people, it would be a lot easier if you put it in the oven. So crack 2 eggs per person depending on the appetite level of the people you're feeding. Mix everything together that you want inside the omelet, put it into some oven-proof container, and put it in the oven at about 350 for about half an hour. Or 40 minutes, depends on your oven and how much you're actually making. And maybe when there's 5 or 10 minutes left of cook time, bake time, if it's in the oven, you can sprinkle some cheese, maybe some cooked bacon, and that'll give that cheese time to melt and the bacon time to heat up. If you put the grill option, if you have the grill, sometimes called broil, you can get the cheese to the point where it's actually bubbling a little bit and gives it a nice crust. I've mentioned bacon and cheese, but please understand I am not suggesting it as a healthy alternative, because my information at the moment teaches me that neither of those options are on my list of healthy food to eat. I could be wrong. It's just what I believe right now. So let's get started. I have a small frying pan. No, I'm going to change to a bigger frying pan because I have more pumpkin than I planned on. I don't have a fridge. When I went into my bag of veggies, I noticed the pumpkin was almost turning. So rather than risk losing some of it due to rot, I'm going to cook it all up right now. And if it's too much, I'll have leftovers. So what I'm going to do first is partially cook the veggies. Here I have pumpkin in relatively small pieces, and I have some spinach that I've already chopped, washed, and rinsed. They're going to go first into the frying pan to basically warm through, not really cook. And I'm putting barely any water, about a tablespoon. And then I'm going to add the spinach and the pumpkin, and that'll be about 2 minutes just to heat through. The process of cooking the omelet will continue to cook these vegetables. Other vegetable options are onion. Many people like onion with eggs, garlic, tomato, zucchini. This would be the point also if you're going to eat bacon and it's not cooked already. I would put it in beforehand and let it cook for at least 5 minutes, depending on how you like your bacon cooked. Some people like it really crispy. So that'll be about 2 minutes. I would also like to mention there is available at many grocery stores pre-cooked meat, pre-cooked chicken, pre-cooked bacon, and I want to share my information about pre-cooked meat. As soon as the animal stops breathing, its meat starts to rot because there's no life going through the meat. no blood, no oxygen. And then when you cook the meat or chicken or fish, more life is lost. More damage is created in the meat or chicken or fish. And when you buy it already pre-cooked, it's not going to be in its most beneficial form. It will have lost a lot of its nutritional value. So that alone will hopefully teach you to minimize how much pre-cooked meat you eat. Besides that, many times when you open up a sealed package of this pre-cooked meat, there's a smell. And that smell is usually chemicals or gases that are pumped into the container before it's sealed to maintain the freshness of the meat, chicken, or fish, which in my information is not necessarily healthy and almost certainly not food. I was working at one of the fast food restaurants that serve sandwiches and salads, and every time I sliced into one of those pre-cooked chicken rolls or pre-cooked roast beef, there's always that smell of some kind of preservative. So that will maybe be what you need to know to not buy the pre-cooked meat. If it's pre-cooked and put in the freezer section at your grocery store, that's a little bit better because the factory or the food processing plant doesn't have to use as much of that preservation method to maintain the freshness of the meat, chicken, fish. So that's my spiel for today. Now this has been more than 2 minutes because I have more quantity than I originally planned on. But here I have 2 eggs. I'm only doing 2 eggs because it's just for me. If I had more people to feed, I would put more eggs. I'm going to beat it. This is just eggs. I haven't added anything to it. There's going to be a little bit of moisture from the vegetables here. Some of it will drip off the lid. So I'm going to transfer these heated up vegetables into the bowl with the scrambled egg. And I've noticed with my time with a frying pan, whenever I do this, there is always something right here. Some of the liquid, some of the food. So I will always just wipe it clean. Because if I put it back on the burner and there's some food there, it'll be harder to get off when it's cleaning time. So now in the pan, the burner's still on, the fire's still on low heat. I always try to cook with low heat. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of virgin olive oil. There's about 2 tablespoons. That'll heat up during the time where I mix the eggs with the spinach and the pumpkin. And the heat that's already in the spinach and the pumpkin will start to partially cook the eggs. I also want a little bit of salt. That was 2 big pinches compared to 2 small pinches. And then this is going to go back into the frying pan using my spatula. I've given some recommendations about the spatula. This is a new one that came to me recently. I don't suggest this kind of spatula go in the dishwasher. If it's got a plastic handle and there's no glue holding the rubber piece on the handle, then it's okay to put into the dishwasher. But this would, with the heat of the dishwasher, the wash cycle, the dry cycle, I'm pretty sure it's going to make the handle, wooden handle, weaker, quicker than it would if you just hand wash it. So I have the omelet with the 2 veggies inside the frying pan, and there is a bit of extra oil on the outside. This frying pan is now getting a little bit old, and there is some wearing out of the middle. So I put a little bit extra than I would if it were a brand new Teflon pan. Teflon is ideal for eggs, especially because it's not going to stick as much as it would if you were using just a regular stainless steel frying pan. So that's going to cook for probably about 5 minutes. It won't take too long because everything is spread out compared to if I would have used the smaller one. And here at this moment, what you can do is put the cheese or the partially cooked broccoli or the fully cooked bacon, even ground beef, cooked chicken breast would be nice, the slightly fried onion. You could put it on right now, because the method I'm going to use is flipping one half onto the other half. The other possibilities are you could try and flip it like a pancake, but I don't want to because the potential is too high to miss the flip and lose part of it over the edge. Flipping a pancake, if you miss the flip, because the pancake's more solid, it'll usually slide back into the frying pan, maybe leave a little bit of the uncooked part on the edge. Not a big deal, but missing the flip on an omelet, it's probably going to fall off and fall on the floor. And with a concrete, unfinished floor, there's no 5-second rule, especially with this kind of food. The other option to flip it is to find, but if you have a plate, a flat plate that's big enough to cover the lid, you put that flat plate with the top side down, hold it with one hand, and then with the other hand you flip it, and that's also kind of tricky, and then you would slide it back into the frying pan. You could put a little bit more oil or butter into the frying pan before you slide it back in. So that's another option. I prefer to use butter with eggs. For me, the taste is from my childhood. Butter is better with eggs, but at the moment I don't have any butter, so I used virgin olive oil. So it's almost ready to be flipped. Not quite. I'm just going with the spatula around the edge because it feels as if it's sticking a little bit. Almost there. Now, I mentioned a few minutes ago that I always try and cook with low heat, and that's because the higher the heat is, the more damage you cause to whatever food is inside the pan or pot. If the heat is really high, if I were to use the high setting, I would create more damage in the food, which means that it'd be less nutritious, and if it actually burns, then it might even go from less nutritious to toxic, poisonous. So I always try and use the low heat when I'm cooking anything. Sometimes, but very rare, I'll heat up water on the high heat, but even that I don't normally do. So I think it's ready to be flipped. So imagine you have your toppings, but it's not going to be on top. Your additional items on one half. So you would take the other half, make sure it doesn't stick, and flip it over. As I said, the middle of this frying pan is a little bit worn, So it's stuck, and it wasn't a full, complete flip, but it's fine. So now I have the omelet on one half of the frying pan, which gives me the perfect opportunity to put the second part of my lunch on the frying pan. Yesterday's episode, I'm calling it an episode, but I think that's a mistake. Yesterday's video, we made bread over the grill using hot coals. And this is it. This is, you can see there are grill marks. It's a bit more involved of a process than using an oven. If you're curious how I did it, there's the video. It's kind of a long video, but hopefully not long-winded. It's the way I have to make bread because I have no oven. And I gave the suggestion that if you're going on a camping trip and you want to have an activity for yourself or whoever else is interested to make healthier bread than that normal stuff you can find at the grocery store, please watch the video. I am just going to cut this into smaller pieces so I can heat all the way through in the frying pan. So now I'm going to try and flip the omelet to its other side. Because it was stuck, I'm not going to flip the whole thing. I'm just going to flip half of it at a time. And I need extra assistance so it doesn't fall everywhere. And it's not going to be as pretty as I'd like it, but it doesn't have to be pretty to be nutritious. So there, that worked okay. I flip it so that the uncooked middle side that was on top is now on the bottom, closer to the heat. This is also a decent tool for use in a Teflon pan. Main difference with this is the curved and soft edge of the spatula. I can get the edges of the frying pan. With this one, I can't get the edge as cleanly. I'm going to add a little bit more virgin olive oil to the side of the frying pan that doesn't have the egg, so I can put the bread in it. So the bread is in the virgin olive oil. I use a virgin olive oil or other virgin oils like coconut oil when I cook. I don't want to use extra virgin oil for the cooking process. Extra virgin oil, always better to have raw. I will put some extra virgin oil on the food here once I have it in my plate. And the bread is cooked, so I don't want to cook it. I'm just heating it, and the omelet is basically cooked. So I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to cover it, let it sit for a while I clean everything up. But let me show you. There's the omelet, and maybe you can see the bread. Decent lunch, or breakfast, or dinner. Easy, quick. And also, one thing I wanted to mention. About 30 or 40 years ago, we received information that eggs aren't healthy. I think the main reason was cholesterol being involved in the heart disease, heart attack issue. But recent science has proven that eggs do not have any connection with heart disease, heart attack. If you don't want to believe the science, I read of a fun example. Dr. Mark Harmon, H-A-R-M-A-N, in his book Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? A book I recommend to everyone. If you don't want to read the book, he's got lots of YouTube videos, great information, helped me. and it'll help you as well if you don't yet have this information. He gave an example in the section where he spoke about eggs of an Italian woman in her early 20s. Her doctor diagnosed her with, I think it was anemia, which is not enough iron in the blood. And his suggestion to her was to eat 2 or 3 eggs a day, every day, which she did. And she lived over 100 years old. I don't remember exactly her age. It may have been 115, it may have been 117, 110. Anyway, she lived well over 100 years old. Eating 2 or 3 eggs a day means about 100,000 eggs in her lifetime, if you do the math. Give or take, every day is obviously going to be different. So this Italian woman, 100,000 eggs she ate in her lifetime, lived to be well over 100 years old. There's, if you don't want to believe the science or the statistics, there's a real life example that eggs are not what we thought they were 30 or 40 years ago. Everybody is different, obviously. So your body is going to react differently to eggs than someone else's body. Also, the final thing I'll mention is if you have the option to buy eggs from a farm, from chickens that were able to live like chickens and laid the eggs when they were ready to lay the eggs. Sometimes they find interesting hiding spots to lay their eggs. If you can find those farm fresh eggs, much better, much more nutritious than the eggs that come from what I call factory farming. Another name I learned through Dr. Mark's book is concentrated animal feeding operations. And I've watched enough videos, documentaries. These animals, chickens in this example, don't have the best living situation. So, farm chickens, and I had a smile because I have a story that I didn't want to lose track of what I was talking about. I was living on an animal farm a year ago, and there were about 20 chickens that were living underneath the house that I lived at or slept at. I would spend the whole day out away from the house, and I would only come back at sleep time. And I forgot to close my big duffel bag one time, and I showed up at night when it was time for bed. I went into my duffel bag and I found a freshly laid egg. So she found a great hiding spot. Luckily I found it, because if I had closed the bag, moved it, and the egg cracked, I would have rotten egg smell in my duffel bag with all my clothes. And if any one of you have smelled rotten eggs, you know how bad it smells and how difficult it is to get the smell out. So that's my story of chickens and their eggs. And I'm going to have this nutritious, balanced lunch. And for yourselves, I suggest you try something similar. Change the variations of what you add to it, depending on what you like, depending on whom you're cooking for likes. I don't know if the grammar was correct. And you can do different batches. You'll have the bowl of eggs that have been beaten, and then you can add the different kinds of vegetables, or you can even add, as I said in the beginning, something sweet like raisins or dates, if you want it to be more of a dessert option. Every person has different preferences of what they like to eat. This is one of those situations where it's very easy to customize to each individual person. And again, just to repeat, much easier in the oven, especially if you're doing a large quantity for yourself, your family, maybe for a dinner party you're going to. You want to bring something homemade, which is always a treat when you go to a dinner party or some kind of celebration. Most people, in my experience, go to the store, buy something that's pre-made, which is quick and easy, a little bit more expensive usually, but the main thing, it's not going to be nearly as healthy as what you make at home. So, with that, let's end this video, and I'm going to have my lunch. Thanks for watching, and good cracking. That was a joke. Good cracking, because you crack eggs instead of good eating, which I say too often.